The first time I heard the word depression out loud was from the school counselor. I was 13 years old, with hollow eyes from too many sleepless nights, a body far too light for my age, and a silence inside me that screamed even when the world was quiet. She said it gently. You might be struggling with depression, and it's not your fault. That day, I left her office with a piece of paper in my hand and a weight on my back. At home, I gave the note to my mom. She read. It frowned and with a voice full of shame and annoyance said, "Depression? That's just laziness. Go wash the dishes, you'll feel better." That was the moment I realized I would not find shelter in my own home. Time passed. The sadness didn't. My teenage years were a blur, a string of identical days where I just existed. My brothers mocked my moodiness. My father called me useless for spending so much time in my room. "This is just being dramatic," he said. "You don't know what real problems are." Loneliness lived with me, sat beside me at dinner, slept on the floor of my bedroom. School was the only place where I could pretend to be normal. At least there, no one yelled at me. But no one understood either. Some teachers said I was smart, but unmotivated. Classmates whispered that I was weird because I didn't smile, didn't go out, didn't speak much. I was a shadow trying to stay invisible. At 18, I made a decision. I asked for help on my own. I walked into a public clinic without telling anyone. I met with an amazing psychologist named Renata. She listened. For the first time in my life, someone really listened. When I told her I sometimes wished I'd disappear, she didn't flinch. She held my hand and said, "You're not alone." I started treatment in secret. I took antidepressants like they were contraband, swallowing them in the bathroom with the door locked. I filled notebooks with my thoughts, my fears, my pain. Slowly, I started understanding myself. I wasn't weak, I was sick. And that didn't make me broken. It made me human. Of course, there were setbacks. Dark moments where I thought about ending everything. One of those moments landed me in the hospital after an overdose. My mom found me unconscious. At the hospital, the doctor said what I'd known for years, severe depression. My family was shocked, but not in the right way. It was as if they'd been slapped across the face. She tried to what? Why would she do that? We gave her everything. But they hadn't. They gave me a house, not a home. Food, not comfort. Rules, not love. After that, things got worse. My father looked at me like I'd stained his name. My mother wandered the house, praying like I was possessed. My brothers stopped speaking to me. I was a stain, a scandal, a failure they didn't want to claim. So I made the hardest decision of my life. I left. At 19, with only a backpack and a stitched-up heart, I walked away from everything I knew. I stayed on a friend's couch from college, someone I barely met. I got a job at a small bookstore, nothing glamorous, but it was mine. I worked all day, studied at night, and cried in silence. But I was alive. For the first time, I was really alive. Years passed. The pain faded into resilience. I kept going to therapy, changed medications, moved to another city. I graduated with a degree in psychology, maybe ironically, or maybe not. I knew what it was like to be invisible. I wanted to make sure no one else felt that way again. I started a YouTube channel anonymously at first. Just my voice, sharing my story. Thousands of people subscribed. Comments flooded in. "You helped me. I thought I was alone. You saved my life." Then something happened. I got invited to speak on a national TV show about mental health. I almost said no, but something inside me whispered, "They need to see you now." I did the interview. I told the world what I had survived. I used my name, and my family saw it. The same people who once said I was lazy were now watching me on TV. The girl they called crazy was now a psychologist, a speaker, a writer. They came back, ashamed, curious, regretful. We never thought you'd make it this far, my dad cried. My mom hugged me tighter than ever before, but I didn't cry. I'd already cried enough for a lifetime. Let's talk. Have you ever been underestimated by your own family, only to prove them wrong? Share your story below. Someone out there might need to hear it. Asterisk forgiveness doesn't come as quickly as apologies, especially when the wounds are still bleeding under fresh bandages. After the TV interview went viral, my inbox exploded. Interviews, collaborations, book offers. People wanted to hear from the girl who had survived a silent war. They wanted to know how someone who was once treated like nothing could become something. But behind the scenes, I was still figuring that out myself. My parents called the next day. They didn't know what to say. My dad stuttered through awkward phrases like, "We're proud of you and you've come a long way." My mom just cried. They didn't say sorry, not really. But there was something in their voices I had never heard before. Fear. They were afraid I no longer needed them. And they were right. I didn't rush to see them. I didn't block them either. I just kept my distance. I needed space, not only from them, but from the girl I used to be. I was still building the new version of myself. Stronger, yes, but also gentler, wiser. I was learning to love that broken version of me who used to cry alone at night, begging the universe to take her away. She deserved to be held, not hidden. Still, curiosity got the better of me one afternoon. I agreed to meet them at a cafe near my new apartment. I wore something I felt powerful in, not fancy, but comfortable, confident. I walked in and saw them already seated, my mom fidgeting with a napkin, my dad staring at the floor. For a moment, we just looked at each other. It felt like staring across a river at people I used to know who'd been swept away by time. "You look well," my mom said carefully. "I am," I replied. My dad cleared his throat. "We watched your video and your channel. We didn't know." I sipped my coffee. "You didn't want to know." There was a long silence. No one reached for their cups. I thought I was being strict. My dad said, "I thought that would toughen you up." "You thought being cold would teach me to survive," I said quietly. "But it nearly killed me." They didn't try to defend themselves after that. I could see they were crumbling inside. Maybe for the first time, they truly saw the damage. Not just the broken girl in bed. Not just the pills or the crying, but the long-term silence, the abandonment, the years of loneliness. I didn't forgive them that day. But I didn't walk away either. That for me was a small victory. Over the next few months, they kept reaching out. Little things. Text messages, voice notes, old photos. My mom even sent me a clip from a podcast I had recorded about emotional neglect saying, "I listened to this twice. I'm sorry." That was the first time she'd said those two words in my entire life, and it broke something open inside me. In the meantime, my channel kept growing. I turned my online presence into something bigger. I started offering online support groups. I wrote a book. I gave talks at universities. Mental health became more than just my passion. It became my purpose. And people kept writing to me. "I showed your video to my dad. He finally understood me. I thought I was crazy until I found your page. You gave me the courage to start therapy. But here's what no one tells you about healing. It's messy. Some days I woke up empowered. Other days I felt like a fraud. There were moments where I still caught myself thinking, maybe they were right. Maybe I was just weak. That's the thing about trauma. It doesn't leave you when success shows up. It whispers. It hides in your victories, trying to sabotage them. But I'd learned to talk back. Whenever that voice returned, I'd open the notebook I used to write in during the darkest days. I'd flip to the page where I scribbled, "No one will ever love someone like me." Then I'd look at my phone, at the hundreds of messages from strangers who did, and I'd whisper, "You were wrong, and I'm still here." Eventually, I did something I never imagined I'd do. I invited my family to one of my live events. It was a panel on breaking generational cycles. I didn't tell them I'd be speaking directly about them. About us. The room was packed, lights low, seats full, cameras rolling. I stood there, mic in hand, facing a sea of faces, and saw them sitting in the third row. My dad was stiff, jaw clenched. My mom already had tissues in hand. I took a deep breath. Then I said, "I grew up thinking I was weak." That sadness made me broken. That emotions were something to be feared, hidden, suppressed. I believe this because no one taught me otherwise. Because when I was drowning, the people I loved the most told me to toughen up and stop being dramatic. But I survived. And I learned something powerful. I wasn't broken. I was hurting, and those are not the same thing. The room went quiet. I continued. Sometimes the people who raise us are carrying wounds they never healed. And in trying to protect us, they end up passing those wounds on, but we get to decide if the cycle ends with us. When I left the stage, I wasn't crying. I was glowing. Not because of applause, but because I had just reclaimed my voice. In front of the people who once silenced it. After the event, my mom hugged me. She whispered, "I wish I had been different." I pulled back and looked into her eyes. So do I, but I'm not waiting for that anymore. And in that moment, I felt free. The night after that event, I didn't sleep. Not out of anxiety or fear, but something else. A kind of stillness I hadn't felt in years. Like my soul had finally exhaled. I walked barefoot around my apartment, lights off, city buzzing faintly. Outside, I looked at the worn-out notebooks on my shelf, filled with a younger version of me crying for help in ink. She was still there, but now she had company. She wasn't alone anymore. That next morning, I woke up to hundreds of new messages. Some were from people who had been in the audience. Others from those who had seen the live stream. But one message stopped me cold. It was from my brother, the same brother who used to mock me for always being sad, who called me pathetic when I stayed in bed, the one who never once checked on me during my worst years. His message was short. "I watched your speech. I didn't know it was that bad. I'm sorry. I'm proud of you." It hit me harder than I expected. Not because I needed his approval, but because I realized I didn't. For years, I'd tried to shrink myself to fit their version of who I was supposed to be. I'd tried to win love by being easy, quiet, normal. But now, I saw how small that love had been. Conditional, brittle. This version of me, bold, emotional, unfiltered, didn't need to be small anymore. That week, I received an invitation to speak at an international mental health conference, London, a dream I never thought would be mine. I stared at the email for 10 whole minutes, rereading the subject line over and over. Keynote opportunity. You changed our lives. I almost cried. But instead, I called Renata, my first therapist. She picked up on the second ring. "Guess what?" I said, already smiling. "You won the lottery?" "Better. They want me to speak in London." I could hear her smile through the phone. "Of course they do. You earned this." Her words meant everything. She'd been there when I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. She knew the battles I'd fought that no one else saw. We talked for an hour about healing, about growth, about how sometimes your biggest scars become your biggest tools. I asked her something I had never dared to ask before. "Do you think people like us ever fully heal?" She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I think healing is learning to live with the cracks without pretending they were never there." It's choosing to show up anyway. The day of the flight, I walked through the airport alone, but I didn't feel lonely. Everything around me shimmered with this quiet, surreal beauty. A girl who once thought she wouldn't live past 20 was now crossing oceans to talk about survival. When I arrived in London, I stared out at the skyline from my hotel window and whispered a quiet thank you to no one, to everyone, to the version of me who never gave up, even when she wanted to. The conference hall was massive, thousands of attendees, professionals, activists, survivors. I walked onto that stage wearing the same necklace I wore during my worst therapy session, the one I clutched in tears when I thought I wouldn't make it. This time, I held it proudly. "My name is Aina," I said. And I used to think depression would kill me. A pause, but I was wrong. What nearly killed me was silence, shame, the belief that I was alone. And I'm here to tell you, you're not alone. The room erupted in applause. But more than that, I saw eyes. Thousands of them, wide open, locked on me. Some filled with tears, some with hope, some with quiet recognition. I knew those eyes. They used to be mine. Back home, things continued shifting that my father, for the first time in his life, started seeing a therapist. He told me awkwardly over dinner one night, "I thought, if you could change, maybe I can too." My mother joined a local support group for parents of kids with mental health challenges. She told her story. She cried in public for the first time. And when someone in the group said, "You're so brave," she finally believed it. Not because she didn't mess up, but because she was finally doing the hard thing, changing dot. As for me, I started writing my second book. Not about pain this time, about joy. I wanted to write about the after. The part of the story no one tells, where life starts again. Where healing isn't a straight line, but a beautiful mess. Where laughter returns slowly, like sunlight creeping back after a long storm. I wrote chapters about soft friendships, the kind that feel like warm tea. About self-trust and planting your feet on the ground without flinching. About boundaries that don't come from bitterness, but from love. And I wrote a chapter titled, "To the Girl I Used to Be." It started like this: you were never too much. You were never too broken. You were just unheard. And I hear you now, every single day. One night, I got an email from a girl who had just turned 15. "I saw your video by accident. I was Googling ways to disappear. But instead, I found your voice. I don't know you, but I feel like you saved my life." I read her words and wept because I knew that girl. I had been that girl, and now I was someone she could find. Asterisk, the strange thing about becoming everything they said you couldn't be is that it doesn't always feel the way you imagined. There were no fireworks, no dramatic music, no slow motion applause. There was just peace. Not the loud kind, the quiet, solid kind. The kind you feel when you wake up and realize you no longer hate yourself. The kind that doesn't need to prove anything. I had spent years fighting for survival, then fighting to be seen. And now, for the first time, I was simply living. But healing isn't a fairy tale ending. It's not a straight road. Sometimes it loops back when you least expect it, and it did. Was at a family gathering, the first one I'd attended in years. My cousin was getting married. My parents begged me to come. My dad promised, "Everyone knows your story now. They respect you." I didn't go for respect. I went for closure. The church was filled with faces from the past. Relatives who used to whisper about me behind closed doors. Aunties who'd rolled their eyes when I missed holidays because I wasn't feeling well. Uncles who called me dramatic at family lunches. They hugged me now, smiled, said I looked great. As if history had disappeared. One of them, an older aunt I used to admire, leaned in and whispered with a smile, "See, You just needed to get out of that phase. I froze. That phase? I almost laughed. I almost screamed. I almost walked out, but instead I just looked at her and said, that phase almost killed me. She blinked, stunned. Then I smiled politely, turned, and walked away. That moment taught me something important. Some people will never understand the war you fought, and they don't have to, because it was never for them. Back in my apartment that night, I sat on my balcony watching the city lights flicker. I thought about all the things I'd let go of, all the identities I'd outgrown, the people, the expectations, the lies I used to tell myself to survive, and I made a decision. I was going to tell everything. No filters, no softening the truth. I wasn't going to hide my story behind metaphors or vague captions anymore. I wanted to write the raw, unpretty, necessary version of what it meant to live with and through depression. So I did. I wrote a new series on my channel called The Parts I Never Said Out Loud. Each episode was a letter, one to my mom, one to my younger self, one to the friend who ghosted me after I opened up, one to the doctor who brushed me off, one to the pills I used to hide under my pillow, and one to the girl who almost didn't make it. The response was overwhelming, not because people saw me as a hero, but because people saw themselves in me. They commented things like, this is exactly how I felt, but never had the words to say. I've never seen someone describe depression this honestly. I thought I was the only one who had. Those thoughts, one message stayed with me for days. It was from a father. He wrote, I used to yell at my daughter for being lazy. Then I watched your video. I cried for an hour. I see her now. I just wish I had seen her sooner. I read it 10 times. Then I called my dad. He answered right away. Aina? Hey, I said softly. We hadn't spoken in a while. Not out of anger, just distance. We were both learning how to exist without hurting each other. A delicate new balance. I just wanted to say. I hesitated. Thank you. He was quiet. For what? For trying, for changing, for being willing to see me now, even if you couldn't before. His voice cracked. I wish I'd seen you sooner, too. There was a long silence. Not uncomfortable, just full. I showed your video to a friend, he said, his son struggling. I told him, don't make the mistakes I made. Don't wait to understand. And that's when I realized redemption doesn't always come from the people who hurt you saying sorry. Sometimes it comes when they change. When they use your pain to stop someone else's. When the chain finally breaks. That weekend, I went to the beach alone. Not to escape, but to reconnect. Sat in the sand, pulled out my notebook, and wrote, this is the part where I no longer chase healing like it's a race. This is the part where I rest, where I let the wind undo the knots I kept hidden for too long. This is the part where I stop trying to be enough because I already am. And for the first time, I believed it. A few weeks later, I was invited to be part of a documentary series on mental health advocates. Me, the girl once too broken to leave her room. The girl who hid her meds under her pillow. The girl who begged the universe not to wake her up. She was now the face of hope for thousands. The production crew came to my apartment. We filmed scenes of my daily life. They followed me to a speaking event, to therapy, to my favorite cafe. Then, during the final interview, the director asked, what would you say to the version of yourself that felt invisible? I looked straight into the camera and whispered, I see you. I love you. You didn't survive for nothing. Asterisk, it started with a small letter in the mail. A real one, handwritten. On thick paper, the kind no one sends anymore. There was no return address, just my name. Neat cursive. Familiar. I opened it slowly, sitting by the window. Heart thudding for no reason I could explain. Inside was a single page. My mother's handwriting. Aina, I don't know how to start this without sounding like a stranger, which in many ways I think I became. Watching you now is like seeing a person I never let myself know. A person I thought was weak, but who turned out to be stronger than all of us. I still cry when I remember the things I said, the things I didn't say. I wish I could go back. I can't, but I want you to know this. I see you now. I see the girl who fought to live. I see the woman who rose from what we buried her under. And I'm sorry. I'm so deeply, endlessly sorry. I read it twice. Then I folded it carefully, placed it in my journal, and sat in silence for a long time. That letter didn't erase the past, but it mattered. It meant someone finally said the thing I've been waiting my whole life to hear. And, in a way, it set me free. Months passed, seasons shifted. I moved into a new place, smaller, quieter, filled with light. I stopped chasing milestones and started celebrating moments. Morning sun, a clean kitchen, texts from people who checked in just because. The soft, boring magic of being okay. I began teaching workshops, not just on depression, but on self-trust. Boundaries, the long road of coming back to yourself. People came not because I was famous, but because they felt safe. That was my greatest achievement. Not the numbers, not the awards, but the fact that someone could sit across from me and say, when I'm with you, I don't feel ashamed. That's all I ever wanted. One night, during a live stream Q&A, someone asked, do you think your family ever truly accepted you? Or do they just tolerate your healing now? It was a raw question. I paused before answering. I think they're still learning, I said honestly. I don't need them to understand everything. I don't need them to apologize for every scar. What I need, and what I have now, is space. Space to be fully myself without guilt, and they're giving me that. I looked into the camera. Sometimes the win isn't getting the love you always wanted. Sometimes it's learning to love yourself enough that you no longer need it. The chat lit up. This hit harder than expected. I didn't know I needed to hear that tonight. I'm sobbing. Thank you for this truth. Not long after, I was invited to return to my old high school, the one where I used to hide in bathroom stalls during lunch. They wanted me to speak at an assembly. A part of me wanted to say no, but another part, the part that used to pray, not to wake up, whispered, go. So I went. I stood in the same auditorium where I once sat in the back row. Invisible. This time I was on stage. Mic in hand. Spotlight on my face. I spoke to a room full of teenagers. Awkward, unsure, hiding in oversized sweatshirts and silent battles. I told them the truth. There was a time I didn't think I'd live past 17. There was a time I thought being sad made me unlovable. There was a time I thought silence was strength and asking for help was weakness. I was wrong about all of it. Strength is crying and still getting up. Strength is letting people see your wounds and saying, I'm healing anyway. Strength is staying when every part of you wants to leave. There wasn't a sound in the room. One girl, sitting near the front, had tears streaming down her face. She mouthed, thank you. I nodded back. No words needed because we knew. We always know each other. After the talk, I stayed to chat. A line of students formed. Some just wanted hugs. Others handed me letters. One boy said, my brother's struggling. Can you help him? I took every story seriously because I remembered what it was like to give someone your pain and hope they don't drop it at night. As I walked to my car, a teacher approached me. She looked older now, but I recognized her. You were always quiet in class, she said gently. I was in pain, I replied. She nodded. I know that now. We stood there under the streetlight, not saying much more, but it was enough. Sometimes silence can hold more grace than words. Now, I live a life I once couldn't imagine. Not because it's perfect, but because it's mine. I have bad days. I still get sad. Some nights are heavy. But the difference is I don't fight myself anymore. I don't punish the softness inside me. I don't call my emotions a burden. I call them proof that I'm alive, that I made it, that I am, despite everything, still here and thriving. To anyone reading this who feels like they're too broken to ever be okay again, you are not broken. You are becoming. There is life after pain. There is light after the dark, and no matter who tried to dim it, that light inside you is never gone. Just waiting. Waiting for you. Let's close this chapter together. What's your I made it moment, big or small, that you're proud of today?